Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Monterey. Oops, that's the adjourned. This is the continued meeting of the regular meeting of the Airport District, originally on the 27th of May or April, and now it is May 3rd. Again, the continuation. It is 1:31 and Director Leffel, I tried to call. I assume she's on her way. Hopefully she'll be here shortly. In the matter of respecting everybody that's in this room, I want to go ahead and get the meeting started. So we'll go ahead and take the call, roll call.
Director Pick?
Here.
Director Leffel is not here yet. Director Sabo?
Here.
Director Miller?
Present.
Chair Sani?
And present as well. Director Miller, would you be kind enough to guide us in the pledge?
Yes. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chairman, I have a comment that I'd like to make before we begin the.
Sure. Good.
I have a comment I'd like to make before we begin the agenda.
Go ahead.
I'd like the
Vice Chair Sabo.
district council. Mr. Huber, would you explain for the benefit of the audience here but mostly the audience that's attending via Zoom, what they're allowed to do relative to making comments or not allowed to do making comments on either the agenda, things that are not on the agenda or agenda items as we proceed?
Sure. And I'll expand that just a touch. I'll include both Zoom and individuals here in the audience as well.
Wonderful.
Because there may be a difference. So generally speaking, at this meeting, individuals on Zoom can watch and can listen, but are not able to comment on any of the items. This is, again, back to the regular Brown Act. I'll call it the pre-pandemic Brown Act, under the Brown Act regulations. This has not been noticed or set up for remote comments. I will separate, so that's as to all items on the agenda. Having said that, now in the room, there will be a little bit different. Item number, what is now item C as in Charlie 1. The board has already received public comment on this item. It was continued from the last meeting following the receipt of public comment. So no public comment will be received on this item. We have received additional comments again in writing. Those we've accepted and we've taken in, but no additional comment from the microphone or from the podium here is going to be available because we exhausted that last time around. As to item number 2, and as to the closed session, the 2 closed session agenda items, you can take public comment on those because previously public comment was not offered on those items. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're a lawyer as much as I can make sense out of anything a lawyer ever tells me. I promised you I was going to try to do better on that, harassing you.
I'm okay.
For the benefit of the audience and for me as one director, are we permitted, according to the rules, to ask questions of the prospective proposers here, even though this is a continuation of the previous meeting, if we have additional questions?
What I would prefer, if you have clarifying questions, you can ask staff, and if staff can't answer them, then we'll invite the proposers up to answer the questions. I would prefer that we ask staff first because we may have the answer for you already. And if we do, great. But if there's a question we can't answer, then we'll certainly invite the proposers.
Okay, yeah,
up.
well, that's normal, ask it of the staff and then we
Yep.
I want to know whether I'm able to get answers from the proposers on certain items. And if we direct through the staff, that's appropriate.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Absolutely. All right, Scott, do you want to go ahead and I'm not exactly sure if anything needs to be announced but I will be removing myself from the room
Yeah,
for item C1.
let's re-announce that. Director Sani is recusing herself related to and Director Sani, correct me if I'm wrong, related to a financial conflict of interest. On advice of her private counsel, she's been instructed to recuse herself based on that reason.
I would just say conflicts of interest, but
Okay.
on advice from
Okay,
personal attorneys.
perfect.
Thank you. Back to item 2.
Okay, considering that I'm the guy that drew the short straw again, we will proceed with item C, which is the continuation of the adjourned regular agenda action item, and that was to be specific, we as a board are to provide direction to the staff for the airport fire and related emergency services proposals and potential contract going forward here. To do that, I will, as chair, open it up to any initial comments that the board might have, and then we'll go to the staff and then maybe to the proposers for more detailed questions. Does anybody from the board do you have a question that you want to, or a comment you want to raise? Okay.
Just glad that I can actually be here for this.
Well, we're
So,
happy to
thank
have you, we're not serving drinks though, or there's no first class, Carl, do you have anything?
Well, I'm just expressing a concern. I mean, we continued this last time because I still feel this is such an important decision. It shouldn't only be made by 3 members of the board.
Chair Leffel mentioned that she had an appointment that was supposed to end at about 1 o'clock and that she would come straight here.
Okay,
So I just sent her a text message to see. I assume she's driving because I asked her, how far out are you? And I've received no response, which I would expect if she was driving.
Yeah.
Of course.
this is difficult because we, sort of out of the flow we were in before and in reference to everything that was said, but I did have an opportunity to think about everything that happened. Well, here she is, so I'll just pause any comments until she's seated.
Director Level has joined our meeting at 13:40 or 1:40 in civilian.
Okay, I'll continue. One of the biggest problems I see going forward with a contract with Monterey is the language we have in the environmental assessment and the settlement. And I understand the reasons why we can't reopen the environmental portions. It's because that would jeopardize grants and it would be cumbersome and it would take too long. But would it be possible? Because I mean, what we have is some very short paragraphs that has huge impact on the way this operation is done. My thought is that City of Monterey and the airport, would it be possible if they were to talk and come under some agreement or letter of understanding that doesn't reopen the environmental, but becomes an attachment, just explaining what this relationship would be going forward?
Yeah,
Director
let me
Miller.
let me stop you short.
By agreement, I will ask that question on behalf of the board for our district council to answer that particular question in more detail. And if it's okay, I'd like to defer that till we have kind of a question and answer from the board members.
Well, it
So-
does,
Yeah,
That
that's
work?
my question.
yeah, it does.
Well, we're not there yet.
Okay.
Okay, what my intention here is to allow board members to comment at this point and then go into a question and answer session with the staff. Did you have something you wanted to elaborate on right now?
Well, I wanted to elaborate on the direction that we were given, and I think Mr. Sabo, you had directed me and specifically me and the city attorney to meet, as well as staff members to get questions on, for certain items related to ProTech, and you directed us to go down several avenues of interest.
There were three things that I asked on behalf of the board for the staff and for you to do. And that was on a legal basis, meet with the city of Monterey, specifically their council, and determine what is feasible, what is practical regarding their alternate proposal in a situation where we don't violate the environmental assessment and the settlement agreement. Thing two that I asked on behalf of the board was to bring back any information, this was of the staff, to bring back any information that was relevant about the situation that ProTech may have had with the city of Burbank in a contract they had in previous years. And then the third thing that I asked staff to do was detail the logistics of the alternate proposal from the city of Monterey is to dispatching from the south side. How would that really work? If it appeared from a legal standpoint that we were able to do that, how would the logistics work on all that? Those three things. Okay, so that's what I will be asking in addition to any other questions the board has here. But are you and Mr. Huber, are you able to speak to that first question about the environmental assessment and the settlement letter?
I am.
Okay,
I am.
if that's okay with the board members.
Yeah, I think it's better we hear the full report before we start asking questions.
Sure. So as you recall from the last meeting, I'll call it the friction was related to, we have language in the FAA's NEPA document in the environmental analysis that says, in the EA, that says that is not it won't be a joint use facility, and that it would be limited to responding to on-airport emergencies only from the ARF station. We were operating under the impression, and again, we were operating under the distinct impression that the city wanted to respond from the south side of the airport. And I'm going to change the term a little bit. They were saying during daytime hours, but the confusion comes, daytime usually means sun up versus sundown versus night, daytime and nighttime hours. I'm going to change that term. And I don't care whether we call it peak or off peak or tier 1 or tier 2 or what have you, but I want to distinguish, because it may be that we come to, to some agreement. But anyway, I think nighttime and daytime hours gets confusing. Okay, so let me use the term peak and off peak, if I can
But
do that.
Scott, step back. I think first of all, we're asking from the,
You're recognized.
sorry, Mr.
I'm
Chair.
sorry, I'm not trying to pound you, but that's the way we're doing
May
it.
I ask a question?
Sure.
The original settlement, I think this is the question. It said, we have a letter from the former mayor who clearly stated there will not be any traffic coming out of that ARF to go off of airport property.
That's correct.
That was in that. And that was part of the settlement, because that was part of the lawsuit.
Yep.
That we did not cross that line.
Yep.
And that we knew that the federal government told us to build a fire station on the north side of the airport. That was what came out of all of our environmental documents. So therefore, the city said, fine, go ahead and build it, but do not leave the airport on calls. correct?
from the R station.
From the R station.
That's
So I
correct.
think that's what we're saying.
Yep.
That's,
And I'm getting
if you go back to that. Now, whatever we have proposed of south side, north side, east side, whatever, that's separate because we're just saying to identify that that is clearly what was stated
Yeah.
in the settlement that we all read, that was signed,
Right.
and the judge stamped.
That's correct. And,
Okay.
and so to clarify, I went back and I had a conversation with the city attorney. Because it was our impression that the city wanted to respond during the evening hours from the ARF station itself. And we had stated at the meeting, it's not allowed. There has been some miscommunication on that. They have clarified that they are not going to respond off airport from the ARF station. They have clarified that during the daytime hours, if they're able to locate on the south side somewhere, and we don't have a place yet that would necessarily need to be determined. But that during the, again, as they put it, the daytime hours, they would respond from the south side. No problem there because that's not the ARF station. And that during the evening hours or whatever the hours are that we agree upon, when they are back, all firefighters at the ARF station, they will not respond to off-airport emergencies from the ARF station. So they have clarified that. Now with that clarification, I spent the weekend snuggled up to several thousand pages of environmental documents. If I might put it that way, and with that clarification, I believe their proposal does meet the EA and the environmental documents. I believe it does meet the guidelines. To clarify, ARF equipment is not included in that definition. The definition in the environmental document says ARF station, and it sometimes uses the term ARF facility. Okay, so what we're talking about is responding from the north side ARF station or ARF facility. They have stated they will not respond to off-airport emergencies from that location. During the day, again, if they're situated on the south side somewhere, and again, in a location yet to be determined in some fashion, that does not violate the terms of the EA because they would be responding from the south side, going out to, Highway 68, however they get there. So, as I mentioned, the assignment was to get that clarification. The city in writing has clarified that to me. That they will during, again, whether we call it evening hours, off-peak hours, whatever, when they are back at the fire station, they will only respond to on-airport emergencies.
Okay, I will open it up to the directors to ask questions on that particular subject there. Do you have additional questions, Director Leffel? On what he
Well,
just said?
Or did you want to continue your questioning? Because you got cut off.
I understand what you're saying, but that still creates some problems, and I hate using this example, but heaven forbid a plane crashes in Kona. It's happening at a time when there is no presence on the south side. The equipment that would be necessary to fight that is on the north side in the ARF station. I am sure the FAA never intended that we wouldn't respond to something like that.
I think what you're referring to is that would likely be a mutual aid call out.
So here's my concern with mutual aid.
Mhm.
I think the word mutual aid and what the fire service calls auto aid or are being used interchangeably. Mutual aid is much more formalized than that. You know, and again, my background was in law enforcement, but I can tell you, we couldn't ask mutual aid for Monterey directly. We would have to go ask the sheriff's office for mutual aid. If the sheriff did not have the resources, they could ask one of the other jurisdictions to respond. 30-year career. I only remember responding once on a mutual aid, and that was to Diablo Canyon 40 years ago. So it, you know, it's just mutual aid is cumbersome. It's the reason why these other agreements, these mutual assistance and these auto things exist, is because mutual aid is a little bit more harder. When we responded to the call of the airplane that went down, I think we were one of the first engines to arrive, right? Our ARF truck. It wasn't the ARF didn't arrive,
Seaside was first.
Seaside.
Seaside first?
It was the structure engine from the airport station. The ARC.
Did the ARF ever respond out there? Okay. But that's what I would hope we could explain in greater detail if we do go forward with an arrangement, what that would mean. And we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot and stop something from responding. Because I doubt if the FAA would want that to occur. I think they would expect us to respond from the north side.
Are you capable of elaborating on both the settlement letter and the FAA's view of the EA? If in fact mutual aid was required here, can we respond without violating the settlement agreement and the EA?
So the specific question you asked relates to mutual aid, and mutual aid is specifically authorized under the federal regulations. That is, I'll use the term an exemption or a carve out. Because the environmental documents say, you know, that we will not respond, that fire will not respond to off-airport emergencies pursuant to FAA regulations. Well, FAA regulations specifically does allow for mutual aid. And that's where the foam trucks would be called. For example, if you had I'm going to change the scenario a little bit, but if you had one of those, you know, gasoline refueling tanker trucks that
yeah.
tipped over, the amount of foam that we have, you know, would be ideal to be called out. That would be a mutual aid scenario where you'd be called out. I think those are things that would necessarily need to be dealt with in a specific agreement versus in a discussion about what we're talking about here at the moment. And the reason why I say that is the proposal that the city of Monterey has proposed now with this clarification is they would like a spot on the south side during the daytime hours. And again, we'll have to define exactly what those are. But that during the evening hours, when all the firefighters are back at the station, they will not respond to off airport emergencies. It would be on airport only. That strictly does comply with the RFP and with the environmental documents.
And I understand. I was just hoping that this could become more formalized, where there is some letter that somehow gets attached to our environmental assessment with FAA without reopening anything.
Well, we don't have to reopen anything. And again, assuming that they mean what they say,
Right.
then we wouldn't have to reopen anything.
I think, Director, that we can't attach something to an FAA document because it's theirs, but embodied in another agreement that would be parallel to it would be appropriate.
Okay. Because, I asked the question last time, could a third party bring suit against us if they didn't like, and we got a lot of letters on this, and they were overwhelmingly in favor of us continuing service with Monterey. But I did get a couple that were not. And they had a concern with fire resources going off the airport. So, I mean, it is a possibility that somebody might bring a third party action against us. So I'm looking for some sort of assurance that we would be insulated from that.
Yeah, and that assurance would have to come as part of the formal agreement itself. Yeah.
Okay.
Director Leffel.
Thank you. So I think one of the things that we heard was that if we chose ProTech and there was only one person with an ARF, that's unsafe. But we occasionally have only one person with an ARF here now because 3 people leave the airport. So would it be possible that we have a stipulation that 2 people are left on the airport and that the 5th person is paid for by the city so that they can then staff a south side truck to service the communities that they are responsible for, that we are hearing from. And it seems to me that that is a fairly logical solution. The city has to have the coverage. We are not opposed to the coverage. We just don't want to be uncovered with what we're responsible for. So it seems like if we had, instead of that we contract for 4,
I
but
did,
that the city puts the 5th person in there between what hours it says are necessary to do daytime coverage. So I think I saw, Dan's, I thought I saw like 8 to 8 or something like that in some piece of paper, but at that point that the city would pay for a firefighter to be on that truck during that time. So to me, as I was trying to think through it over the weekend, I was thinking maybe that's a logical way that we have 2 people on the airport with the ARF on the north side who can cover what we need. But then the city and the Cypress and Monterey Regional have coverage with our truck, but with the 5th firefighter paid for by the city of Monterey. If they want to share the cost with Cypress and Monterey Regional or whoever else that they're covering the territory, that's a separate contract with them and we're not involved in.
I think that director could be part of the negotiations with the city, should the board direct us to begin those negotiations. with the
Okay, well, I was just trying to think of ways.
Sure.
I am very bothered. We are in a very litigious neighborhood. We seem to be the punching bag that everybody loves for the last few years from the Highway 68 coalition that stopped the road that connected us to the north side so that there is not a safe road to bring a fire truck down on that side of the airport. We know that. So we had to make a little skinny road that is at best minimal.
Yeah.
And so we know we had that. Then we had the city sue us because they didn't like that we were going to go through their neighborhood and go off of property. So I would like to have my last 2 years here with no lawsuits. That would make me quite happy. So I would like them to indemnify us.
Director Leffel,
These are
we
my-
don't have a resolution on
I
the
know, I'm
table
just
right
saying,
now. And
my
as far as
questions are,
guidance,
is
as far as guidance goes for the staff, I think that's appropriate at the time that we have discussions about a resolution to give the direction that we want the staff to go in negotiating an agreement with either Protec or the city. So I think the specifics of an agreement with them should be reserved for that opinion, that time when we have a resolution on the floor as to whether we go or give direction to go with Protec or we give direction to go with the city of Monterey.
I'll rephrase it. Would it be possible to be indemnified on any of this by the city?
Yeah, those clauses are not, unique. They're in many contracts. We certainly could, that's something we could work on.
Director Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. So after watching the 7 hours of tape from the previous meeting
It was thrilling, wasn't it?
and catching up on the reading as well, and I appreciate the clarifying answers from staff. It's pretty clear that the point we had reached with the city based on the evolution of the master plan, the evolution of the environmental documents, and then the subsequent lawsuits that ensued, was that we would have an ARP station on the north side that would only respond to on-airport calls. So the change appears to be, and we've heard loud and clear from the community, and I concur with the comments by my colleague about the preponderance of the public comment asking us to continue with Monterey, but there also being a few concerns about off-airport response and how that would all work. There's been an evolution with the city in terms of this potential hybrid solution of a capability to respond from the south side. It's very unclear to me what that would look like at this point, where it would be, how robust it would be in terms of infrastructure. And so I think there's a lot to figure out there. But to the extent that that is something that is achievable through a negotiation with the city, I think it's worthy of pursuit. I appreciate all of the public input. It has been robust, and I think all of us have taken it to heart. I would say that regardless of where we end up with this agreement, a long-term solution to the response times to the city of Monterey in this area, I'm not sure is within our ability to solve. I do think that's probably something that the city is going to have to embrace, whether it's a new fire station or some such solution, perhaps agreements with surrounding fire districts. But certainly for the near term being the term of the contract we're talking about, we can help. It's clear that we've been asked to help, and it would be something we should strongly consider and negotiate, in my opinion. That's all I have.
Thank you. And as far as my comments on what our district council has offered up, he and I presume Ms. Davi came to some very concrete explanations regarding the use of our fire station, the use of our equipment, the location of our equipment, and the location, the ability to go off the airport. That you came to those agreements mutually in your understanding of just the legal issues associated with not violating our environmental assessment and the settlement letter. Is that a true statement?
The only one I would take out of that is you mentioned location. And
Location, south side versus north side.
oh, that, yes, I thought you meant specific location.
I kind of favor
That-
Dunkin' Donuts, you know. but-
Whether that's above or below.
But
my
it's
pay
just
grade,
north
it's
side
outside-
versus
it's outside
north
the
side,
building.
which is critical to our understanding of the legal aspects of this whole thing, because the legal aspects, just to reiterate for the public, the legal aspects of it are very important. As Director Leffel pointed out, we don't want the airport district to be subject to challenges from the public unless we have solid grounds like your written opinion letter, Mr. Huber, and maybe an endorsement from the city. If we chose to go that direction, we risk $145 million worth of federal funding if we violate that agreement, and it's not acceptable to the FAA, or it's not acceptable to those that challenge the agreement. Do you believe all of this is defensible in court?
Yes, I do.
Okay, all right. That answers my question, and that isn't a decision to say yes to the Monterey contract with Monterey. It's kind of an answer to the question that was raised via the alternate proposal, which was the second proposal that our amendment that came from the city of Monterey. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I always say a lot of wrong things.
That's correct.
Okay.
We still have the issue of, and again, the second issue you mentioned that we haven't.
Second issue, what?
About exploring the. Oh, Burbank.
Oh, yeah, I'm coming to my
Okay.
second question. And subsequent, once we finish those questions, if there are other questions from the board that we want to pose to the staff or our council, then we can do that. There was some questions raised by union representatives of the Monterey Fire Department, individuals in the community about our ability to the wisdom of engaging PROTAC because of their prior history, which was just allegations, no evidence presented. One of the things we asked of staff was to investigate that further and to give us either assurances that that's not a true thing, or that the allegations that were made are not consequential to our decision making here.
And I
Are
think-
you prepared to answer that?
I think we are,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. In front of you is a letter from Bill Hirschman from ProTech addressing those concerns. We've also reached out, as you know, to some of the other customers that ProTech has offered, and we've made reference on them. And we find nothing in anything that we've done that would preclude you from choosing ProTech. Should you decide to go that direction, there's nothing that we found untoward at all. The letter does explain the Burbank situation.
Would you summarize that just quickly if you can?
Sure, I would, yeah.
Or let them speak.
ProTech had been the contract service provider at Burbank Airport, Burbank Hollywood Airport for, I believe it was 15 years.
91 to 2015.
91 to 2015. They were, at the same time, the airport was managed by a company that manages airports. TBI, Airport Management to be specific. TBI stood up their own firefighting unit and displaced ProTech. Clearly, you can always look for things like that to have politics involved, and there were. But the conversations I've had with ProTech indicate that those were political decisions, not related to performance.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any questions from the board members on that particular item of the allegations against ProTech regarding Burbank? Carl,
No,
None.
no,
okay.
thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then the final thing that I asked on behalf of the board was for staff to discuss with this the city of Monterey's fire department about how the logistics of if we chose to go that direction, how the logistics of having a fire truck, our fire truck on the south side and being dispatched from that point, and what when it would go, how it would be staffed. Any other details that can come. I know this is not not a statement of the final agreement or the final contract, but I think for all of us, having a better sense of how that would work. Did you have some discussions with the city of
We had
Monterey?
had those discussions previously, so to reiterate what we had talked about, and Gaudenz, please feel free to fill in if I get the discussion topics incorrect. We would find a location suitable to both parties on the south side wherein a fire state or a structural fire truck would be stationed along with personnel to man that truck. Location and logistics of that mechanical relationship yet to be determined. In terms of the mechanics of an off-airport response, this is where I need you to confirm. It would be similar to if they were in a station. They would have radio communications. It would be similar to as if that vehicle was in a station, they would
In
have
a
radio
station.
communications and they would be dispatched from that location. So would be done by radio. The actual mechanics of the location and the facilities yet to be determined.
Okay, does that, and I'm gonna step aside from the staff, does that accurately reflect the discussions you and your staff have had on this? I'm not reflecting a decision to go with the city of Monterey, only the feasibility from a logistical standpoint of making it happen. So making it work. Anybody else on the board have a question on the subject of how it works? Okay, I did have one question because I heard statement from one of the members of the staff that there was no space on the south side of the airport for launching a fire truck or having a fire truck present there and all that. I guess that is not necessarily now the case, that there would be some space.
Mr. Chairman Pro Tem, I believe that the comment was that there is no space in this building. And there is none.
In this building.
In this building. That was one of the first discussion topics when we raised that with the city. They asked about location in this building. And we made clear that there is no space available in this building at this time. That does not mean that we can't find other space outside of the building.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Now, those are the three questions that we directed staff to elaborate on. At this point, I will ask members of the board, starting with Director Peggy, if you have additional questions for clarification on the two proposers there.
And we are not at the point where we're directing.
Right.
We're not providing.
We're
direction.
not, there, I have received no motion to say, let's give direction to staff to do this with one or the other of the proposal.
I have no further questions.
Okay. Mary Ann, do you have anything further?
I don't think so. No, thank you.
Okay. Oh, no, okay. Okay, and I just will not, I will take it back to the board here for a motion regarding one of the two proposers. We've heard the proposals from both contractors, potential contractors, and I think we've exhausted that subject in understanding what they're proposing to do and at what price. I will then bring it back to the board for a motion to give direction to the staff to negotiate a contract with whatever the motion is with one or the other of the proposers. Before that, I want to make the statement to all the parties here that we appreciate the sincerity of the proposals that were made and the erstwhile efforts on the part of both the city and ProTech to provide good services to us. And I don't think there's any question about whether or not good services would be provided to us, and to the members of the public. I only took a little umbrance, and I'm kind of speaking as the chair, and I hope I'm backed up by the rest of the board. I took a little umbrance at some of the very critical comments of the board that we were only undecided because of a few bucks on a price. That isn't the case. We are at the airport district, and we are, as members of this board, citizens of the community. We care about the people that live in the area, Highway 68, Ryan Ranch, and whatever we can do reasonably to provide safety and assurances to the community. We also have a priority as a district board elected by you guys to take care of the finances of the district and provide safety as required by the FAA to passengers that are landing and departing from the airport and to people that are accessing our facilities here. And we take that very seriously. And so for those who are critical of us, that we're only thinking about a buck, we do think about bucks. If anybody in your right mind would think about their bucks, but it wasn't down to a matter of dollars and cents. And so I wanted to share that, and I think I reflect the opinions of the board, and any decision we make will be with the full recognition that both parties, both of the proposers, gave it their best efforts to try to provide services to not only the district, but the community here. So bring it back to the board. I will accept a motion regarding what we are asked to do, which is give direction to the staff for airport fire and related emergency services.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion, and I want to preface it by saying that I in no way, this is not a reflection on ProTech, and that I do believe that ProTech could and would provide the service that we need at the airport. That being said, I will make a motion that we direct staff to try to work out an arrangement that makes sense for us at the airport and for the community with the city of Monterey's fire department. And I hope that what we heard verbally can be put on paper and signed so that we are, I'm going to use the word covered in the future with anything that would arise, because we're trying to do the best for our entire community, but our number one responsibility is to the people who fly in and out of here. And I heard loud and clear the other day that we are a tree city and people come here for the beauty of the trees. The reality of it is that if our trees are too high and a plane clips a tree, people don't want to be here because it didn't end well. So there is so much involved in this, and people can, I don't want people speaking out of both sides of their mouth. I guess that's what I'm saying. Either you're in with us or you're not. And we believe that we are in this community. I've lived here 40 years. I've given a lot of time and money to this community, as have my fellow board members. And I think that we have proven how much we support the community. So with that, that is my motion. And as I said, I think there are some things that are going to have to be worked out here, and I will look for them in the agreement, or I will not approve the agreement.
Okay, for the benefit of our secretary, could you give the short
I'm
version
giving,
of that? Okay.
I'm giving direction to staff to work with the city of Monterey to try and come up with a solution to this.
All right.
I'm going to second the motion. I would also like to say I'm going to support it. No reflection on Protec. I do think you're capable. You've demonstrated in this state and other states that you're capable of doing that, of meeting our ARF needs here on the airport. And it may, who knows how this is all going to end up. So we may be coming back to you, but yeah, I will support moving forward. I mean, we already have a fire department in place. The transition to a new ARF would certainly be smooth. I think both sides are trying to be creative moving forward. I think we have some unique obstacles that we need to work out. And I'm hopeful that that can happen. So I'll support the motion. I second it too.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to comments, but before I open it up to comments from the board on the motion, I'd like to propose an amendment to your motion, Director Luffel. And that is, in addition to everything that you said, I would like to see a and I'm going to use the term, a legal opinion endorsed by the city of Monterey that agrees that our understanding, your understanding as you described to us, is acceptable to the city, and that they will not, they will help indemnify us in the event that we are challenged on this, that we are not, that we are violating the terms of the settlement agreement and all that. So I know that's a lot of words, but maybe you can help draft another an amendment that accomplishes that.
Yeah, I'm not sure an amendment to the motion is necessary. It was indemnification was brought up previously, and that's sort of getting into how the.
Well, I want to sign, I want, as one director, I want to see it in writing that we have it from the city. And I'm sure that you're, from a legal standpoint, you're quite capable of doing all that, but I want it as part of our direction to the staff. I want to see that and come back to us. And it may be your own, the city, the airport district's memorandum, and as signed off by the city's legal person, Christine Dobby, you know, if is that doable? Not whether you agree, but is it doable?
Understood, yeah.
Okay, all
It is
right.
doable.
All right. Do you accept my amendment, Director Leffel?
Sure.
No, you had the idea first,
Well, I don't think it's fine.
so.
There are a lot of things they need to work out, not just.
There's a
the
lot of
application.
things to work out. There's a lot of things to work out, but I don't want, as one director, I don't want to proceed forward if we can't have a signed letter of agreement between the two of you being lawyer, our lawyer, their lawyer, that says that's our understanding and the city council backs that up. Okay,
Understood.
okay.
Well, I haven't agreed for my second if I wanted, and
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know the protocol there.
I believe that's a protocol. Don't I also have to accept it? Yes, I would I would sleep a lot easier at night knowing I'm indemnified. I would like to be indemnified in everything I do. But I hate to bind your hands because this is going to be a multifaceted negotiations. I think you realize that's our desire, and this is certainly going to be something but I would hate for this to be dead before you come back to us. I would like to see it, but I just don't think it's needed right now. Just let the two parties talk it out and see what happens. So if somebody else wants to second it, I'm not willing to under those circumstances.
Well, I'll second it.
Okay.
Director Pick, we've been leaving you out of the whole conversation here. You're easy to.
Well, we're so glad you're back.
It's great to be back.
Please, please add your comments to the motion on the table, which as amended.
Thank you. So I would echo what a lot of what's been said today, and that is Protec's proposal was solid. You can and potentially will provide us with excellent support depending on how this interesting turn of events moves forward. I think that I'm encouraged by the turn of events between the district and the city. And I hope that it's an enduring trend and not a flash in the pan. No pun intended, firefighters. So I think the potential is great, but it's going to take some good faith negotiation. I am concerned about any potential costs of this hybrid development with the South Side solution. But I am encouraged by the potential that it would allow us to assist the city in maintaining response times to the community that are as good as they can be. So that's my comments.
Thank you. And as far as my comments go, did you finish your comments, Carl?
What's that? Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, as far as my comments go, again, I echo what Director Pick said. Both sides gave legitimate efforts, and both of the sides are capable of providing the services to the airport district. I think my inclination is to say we have access to a depth of resources with the city of Monterey. And so I'd like to see that explored. And my understanding is that on the subject of mutual aid, we already have a mutual aid agreement with the other jurisdictions in the area here. And that would allow Protect to participate in those mutual aid agreements. But I think the mutual aid thing, if it comes to that, in a catastrophic event on the airport, we need access to all of the resources that might be available to us in the area here. And I have a little more confidence in the fact that the city of Monterey might have access to more personnel, more equipment that we might need. So having said that, that's my comments. Now, I will bring it out to the public for comments on this particular motion. Prior to that, no, I can't do that
You've already received public comments.
on this motion.
You don't get public comment on the motion. Public only gets one bite at the apple.
Well, okay, all right. Well, all right. Having said that, I just take it to a vote at this point. And again, what we are voting on, would you reread the motion as you understand it and the second?
Direct the staff to work with the city of Monterey to determine if we can come to an agreement on fire services and make sure in there that we have an indemnification from the city on anything that we do going forward with this.
Okay. Close enough for work. Okay, please call the roll on this motion.
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Leffel,
Yes,
Director Sabo,
Yes.
Director Miller.
Yes. Okay, we are completed with this item and thank you all for participating in it and we appreciate it. The community's interest in this as well as Protex and we'll take 5. Good.
Thank you. In progress? Yep. Good afternoon. It is 2:35 on the 5th. I'm sorry, on the 3rd of May, Wednesday here. Want to thank Vice Chair Bill Sabo for stepping in. And we'll go ahead and continue to item C2, to discuss the strategic planning report review and more efficient board meetings. And this has been outstanding for a while, since the beginning of the year to some extent, but I wanted to try and come together as a board with just a few things that we can maybe do to have more efficient or effective board meetings. And I know that it is up to the chair ultimately, but I also think we as a board, even as we discussed in our strategy session last fall, I think maybe we need to come to some agreements on certain things that we're willing to do as a body. So in front of you are some ideas, thoughts and ideas. We could consider specific times requiring meeting extensions or things of that nature. And Scott, you can help try to walk through if there's some, I know sometimes we've got to do language or policies or
Is it in
certain
here?
things with this too. So again, there might be follow-up on this. Having set breaks or
Locked
at
up.
least, within every 2 hours or whatever it is, I think it's important for staff as well as audience and people, our people in the public as well as just us on the dais as well. Do we limit meeting time length and consider, how we address that? And let's see. Do we request public comment before individual board members speak? That might be a change to our procedures. One of the things Scott and I had talked about was if there's so many people speaking too, we could have a shorter time limit to that. So anybody, you guys have all seen this document. I think it's been in front of us a couple times. Is there anything in particular that stands out that either people like or don't like?
I'll start. First of all, when we do have a lot of public comment, we do limit the time. We don't give them 3 minutes. We've done that routinely for 15 years that I know of. So we've cut it to either 2 minutes or 90 seconds, depending on how long, how many people there are and what the time is. So we already do that.
Scott, could you, because
Yeah.
I,
So if you want to continue with that, we need to have a written policy that says that. 'Cause
Okay.
that has typically been done sort of on the fly. And that it gets dangerous when you do that. So what I'd like to do is, if you want to do that,
Memorialize it.
memorialize it.
Okay.
Is that the 3-minute? Are you talking about the 3-minute thing, Marianne?
Yeah, so that if there are 200 people here, that we say everybody's going to get 90 seconds instead of 3 minutes.
That's not in our governance manual, I guess. huh?
It's not currently, no.
yeah, that was my understanding. So it was one of the things that has come up in the last couple of months.
But how would something like that be triggered? Because you can't be vague, right?
No, what you would say is, you would say, for example, something along the lines of, if there are 9 or fewer speakers on any individual item, then the speakers will have 3 minutes apiece. If there are 10 or more, then it would be 90 seconds apiece. There are some.
Always?
Yeah, you would memorialize it, right? And just, that's a hard rule.
Okay.
Now, you could also, there are some agencies, for example, who say, we will allow 30 minutes of public comment for each item, which allows 10 people. If there are more than 10 people, then we will do a lottery. Only 10 people will speak. The rest can submit something in
Yeah, I've
writing.
heard of that. Yeah.
Not my favorite. I'd much rather shorten the time and have everybody speak, because then no one can complain and say, I wasn't heard. But again, it's up to you. You do have the ability to limit the comments such that it will allow you to conduct the business of the board and the business of the airport.
So, for instance, the Board of Supervisors, Coastal Commission, the CPUC, what they do after they've heard about 30 or 40 people, they'll say, at interest of time, everybody who is on this side of the issue, please stand, and they count noses, and then they have everybody on this side, because people are saying the same thing over and over and over. But that's interesting, because I sit on 2 other public boards and nobody has it written anywhere. It is just when you look out there and see a sea of faces, that you say today's going to be 2 minutes instead of 3. So I'm good with that. We say that it goes to 2 minutes instead of 3 if we have more than 15 people. Anybody else?
I have a comment.
That
Madam
sounds
Chairman,
good.
I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
3 minutes.
Vice Chair, Steve.
I'm not in favor of identifying it as 2 minutes or 3 minutes and all that. I think, one, we ought to give the chair discretion as to how that person is going to run the meeting. And if there's a whole bunch of people out there that the discretion of the chair, they can limit it to 2 minutes. If there are only 3 people and it's a hot item, then maybe more time should be allocated to it. But generally, if we're incorporating it into the governance manual, general precedence would be, it would be 3 minutes, but at the discretion of the chair, it can be expanded on any individual item or motion. So I think we ought to give the chair the discretion to manage the meeting and to control the amount of time with some general guidance, like the 3-minute guidance.
And Vice Chair, my understanding is it is not at the purview of the chair at this point. Scott,
Well,
could you?
no, it's not. Apparently not, but
So
that's what I'm proposing, and I don't know what we're doing here. Are we proposing changes to the governance manual? Are we just having a chat about the whole thing? What happens at the end of all this?
The result would be changes if we agree to things,
Changes to what? The governance manual?
wherever it needs to reside.
Depending on what the change is, if the board wants to make changes to have a more efficient meeting, depending on what the change is, then it might be the governance manual. It might just be a written policy that we include.
Well, what is it you're proposing this? What is it you want to accomplish at the end of this?
I want more efficient meetings.
No. I mean, from a legislative standpoint, do you want just a policy decision that we write down, or do you change the governance manual? What is it you want to have happen?
I would leave that advice to our council. So,
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
So I think,
Director Pick.
Dr. Sabo, I think what we're probably doing at this point is discussing how we might run a more efficient meeting. If we land on certain specifics, then I think we need to talk through with staff whether those are changes to governance manuals, whether they're changes to agenda management process, exactly how we implement them. But I think we're in the brainstorming is probably too broad a term, but discussing it a bit generally right now.
I mean, we discussed it somewhat in our strategy meeting, some things ultimately, I thought, and then I've tried to come up with some more things here. And I'm very open to if anybody else has. And I think ultimately we as a body have to agree to what we're, how we're going to function.
Yeah.
And that kind of came out of our strategy meeting to some extent. So that's where I'm at. I just think if we can agree to 3 or 4 things and figure out, work with staff, work with council where it needs to go, obviously it will need to come back. I would like to see that we don't have meetings longer than 5 or 6 hours. I would love to have a 3-hour meeting, but I'm a little realistic after being here for 3 years.
Yeah, if I may.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd be game for a 4-hour meeting cap. And if we need to go beyond 4 hours, then reschedule it. Yeah, continue it. Because I think sort of my, so a couple thoughts on meeting here. So agenda management, I think we could tighten up agenda management. Just deliberate thought ahead of time on how long these might take. They're always wild cards, especially when it involves significant public comment. But from a policy discussion, board management perspective, I think we can perhaps do a better job at looking at the agenda topics and saying, that's probably going to take an hour. That's probably going to take 3. And then that's it. Those are the 2 items for this agenda. So agenda management, in terms of how we manage ourselves during the meeting. Some of us ask more questions than others. I think obviously we don't want to muzzle anybody. Right. We just want to be respectful of everyone's time and move as expeditiously as we can through our comments and questioning. With that in mind, as I did on the fire topic, I sent my questions to the director by email. They were answered in detail, and they scratched my itch. And if I felt that the public needed to hear those answers, or if the other directors needed to hear those answers, I would have reiterated that information in open session for the good of the public and my fellow directors. But otherwise, it's clarifying things for me in terms of preparing to make a decision. The one I like on the list you handed out, Chair, is written reports as opposed to oral review of committee and external board meetings. We spend a fair amount of time talking in fair amount of detail what happened at the boards we sit on outside of this body and the subcommittee meetings. To the extent the public needs to know that because it's relevant to decision making, obviously we can't muzzle anyone. But to the extent that we want to be respectful of each other's time and staff's time, a written report can and should be made part of the record, and we should consider not repeating it orally. Let's stop there.
Thank you for your comments.
As far as meetings, not that I hold Pacific Grove out there as a way to do everything, but the way they conduct, they do closed session before the council meeting. Council meetings start at 6. At 10 o'clock, if they're not done, they then vote if they're going to continue or table everything. And if they vote to continue, they'll only go 1 additional hour to 11 o'clock. So if it's something that they're near completion and they're at that 10 o'clock time, they as a body can vote on tabling it or just going through with the understanding it can't exceed 1 hour.
Well, what happens if they can't make a decision?
Continue.
Then it has to be tabled. 11 o'clock is the time that it ends. But never say never, never say always. I'm sure there's you don't want to paint yourself in a corner. And if we knew we had an hour to come to a conclusion on this, we may be more willing to do that. But
Sounds great.
I put that out there only as as what another body is doing for this. So that means we'd be going to 1 o'clock meetings at the latest. Well, no, 4 hours would be 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock at the latest.
And then closed session, you're not going to start at 7 in the morning, right? I was,
Well, I say that's how they do it.
Right.
But, you know, one reason is they're at night, so.
right.
But I would include closed session when we're talking about that 4-hour cap.
Agreed.
Mhm.
Agreed. I disagree. Well, and that's the reason I disagree.
Please, Chair. You're-
Well, I signed on to this, to be elected into position. I accepted every 4 years and all that. And I am under the understanding that my job is to be, is legislation. And, to cast my vote with the best information available and in my best conscience here. My mission, that I was given in this position wasn't to limit myself so that we can get out of here in 4 hours. My objective is not to get out of here in 4 hours. If we can get out of here in 2 hours, great. But if we have situations where everybody's already decided everything, it's a 4-to-1 vote, then we don't need to worry about the time spent discussion. I think the board needs the ability to debate subjects. There isn't a legislative body that I know of that doesn't have the ability to debate a topic here. But if it's already decided, then we don't need discussion. But I don't think that's acceptable under our democratic system. So I would suggest that we not limit the meeting to 4 hours. Now, that becomes kind of sacrosanct, and if the discretion of the chair, we have other intervening needs to shorten the meeting, we can then go to an adjournment on the thing. But as a standing procedure, no more than 4 hours, that's not very realistic. And I don't agree at all with the idea that we as directors should direct our questions to staff, get them answered so that we're satisfied. The debate that goes on when I hear Mary Ann ask the director, Scott, a question or to our executive director, then the answer comes back. Now we all know that eliminates the doubt in my mind, or it promotes another question. So I want to hear the discussion that goes on between a director and the executive director or with our district council. I want to hear that. That's part of our legislative process. If we're just here to get through a meeting and cast a vote, then I don't want to be a part of this. That's not a democratic process. And we are legislators. We are not appointed by some club or group or something like that. We're elected, and as we just saw, there are differences of opinion but in the public about what should be done. And I think that needs time to be debated. It needs maximum information to be available. And I don't agree with an absolute cap on the number of hours for every meeting of 4 hours. I don't get that, so that's my comment.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So,
Director.
so what I would say to that is agenda management. If you manage your agenda such that you don't overload it with items that would require a 7 or 8 or a 9-hour meeting, you can stay to a 4+1, which I love, frankly. I love the way PG does that. I didn't know that, but if they can do it with 7 council members, we should be able to do it with 5 directors. And you can still have a robust legislative give and take and public comment and stay within a reasonable amount of time. So I hear you, and I certainly don't think we should be curtailing the amount of discussion we do, but there's something to be said for disciplining our process.
Could I ask you to elaborate on that, because
Yeah.
You said something that I'm sure is a shared opinion on the thing.
Sure.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you manage that agenda to say, do we leave it up to Mike? Do we leave it up to Scott? Do we leave it up to the chairperson to say, I don't like that item. It's going to take too long. Let's not even do that.
Well, yeah, no, I'm happy to.
How do we do that from a practical standpoint?
Happy to answer that, if I may.
You are?
Yes.
So,
Are you happy about it? Or are you just
I am.
pulling my?
No. I'm happy to answer it. So agenda management is the job of the executive director and the chair of the board. That is generally, and if I'm off the mark.
I don't mean they meet together and talk about it.
So it's
We are.
the job of those two to develop the agenda in such a way that it is accomplishing the business of the district over time. As we've seen, there are some agenda topics that require action in certain times of the year. Budget's a great example. Right? There are other topics that can be moved left or right by months with zero impact on our ability to run the district.
Like, what would be an example of that?
Drones, emergency services, just an update on that. I mean, we've
Yeah.
got some of those things that
Yeah.
are in our.
And frankly,
our
this
future.
topic, right?
This topic,
mean,
well, this topic, yeah, 3
Yeah,
months.
it's slid left or right. So there are a lot that aren't fixed in time, or they're far less sensitive to time adjustments. And so agenda management is a very, it happens. I mean, I hope I'm not the only one that sees this. It is done in every organization I've ever been part of. And so agenda management is a thing. It's very real. It can and should be done. It should be done in a collaborative way between the executive director running the staff and the chair of the board running the board. That sets at least some expectation for what it is we're trying to tackle in any given meeting, right?
Mhm.
And then we get about how do we do that? How do we do that in a reasonably efficient way? And we can talk about that, limiting public comment if it's a big crowd is one way to do that. But I think agenda management,
I mean, well, since we're, if you excuse us, we have
Go
a
ahead.
little discussion here, the two of us. Agenda management, it's like motherhood, you can't ignore that. The devil's in the details. How does that
Yeah.
get administered though? Because if there's a majority that feels one way or a minority that feels another way, or there's a minority that wants something discussed, wants it on the agenda, the majority can just dismiss all that and never get it on the agenda. That's what I'm, how that agenda management is processed is important. And I, as one director, or wherever takes my place in whatever future there is, then I want them to have the opportunity to be able to speak, to have an item addressed that is of concern to them, because now we represent a district and so do you. Okay, we're just not at large. And so I want to bring something up that affects my district. Nobody else wants to hear about it. Okay, so we never get to talk about it. I don't know how that happens because it doesn't fit in somebody's idea of an agenda. It's good to be the king, but if that's only good if you got the power to say no to others. So that's what I'm concerned about,
Vice
how
Chair.
that gets administered going forward. And it isn't just a casual item. And I'm not disagreeing with you about agenda management.
Sure.
And controlling the amount of time we have in this meeting, but saying, quit asking questions because it drags it past your 4 hours on the whole thing. That's not good.
I'm going to try to, I'd like to hear from the executive director and staff too about their ideas. I think having a set time for the day will help a lot of people with schedules, with just expectations. I think even workload and things like that. And that's my concern. And this is partially why I'm trying to tighten it up a little bit. I've never gone to agendas where it's open-ended, honestly. I mean, from a corporate world perspective, you have certain hours, you have certain times, you typically have a meeting calendared and it's in your calendar and that's that. And if you don't accomplish what you need to in that meeting, you set up a second meeting.
Well, if you can't come to the meeting or you got financial time constraint, don't come to the meeting. Just leave your chair empty.
Well, this is the issue that some of us have other things going on and that, we can't be here 8 or 10 hours for the day, ultimately. So I think, if something's very important and we don't have the information we need, there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, we're going to continue this to the next meeting.
Continuing
ultimately.
is one thing.
Mhm.
Limiting to 4 hours is not okay.
I'm not,
what we're talking
Yep.
about is continuing at 4 hours.
Yeah.
So it's not a hard and fast, if we don't vote on a subject, it's not over. So it almost by definition gets continued.
and you push it forward with, these are the things that are needed. People go back and maybe there's more information that's needed. Maybe there's more from the staff that's needed. Maybe we need to do our own more research, whatever it is, so that we can move forward. To Executive Director, do you have any or any staff?
You know, I think we would support limiting the duration of a board meeting. We would also be very supportive of agenda management, as long as the business of the airport is prioritized in that. There are always things that we need to bring forward, and they are time sensitive or time critical. Those things must be addressed on the timeline that we establish both with FAA and with our other regulatory agencies. So those are must do's. If we take that as the first priority, must do's for the business of the airport. And then if we have time, we can add additional discussion topics. I think we can make that work, but I would encourage you to look closely at the mechanics of what you do in a board meeting and how you accomplish what you do as more of an avenue to reduce the duration. I think a cap on a day is good. I think everyone, us included, get tired after a little while, and it's a little difficult to continue. I don't think we make good decisions or give you good advice when we are tired, nor do I think you make good decisions, not that you're not trying, but the chance of you not making a good decision when you're tired is always there. I think the final thing I would say is this board is going to get younger at some point, and you're going to
This
have
board is
people
going to
that
get
are,
younger.
yes, you're going to have people that are going to have jobs outside of this. And the one thing that is loud.
We have at least 1.5 of those. I'm only counting you as a half.
Yeah, so I think what you do today, and this is the whole point for me, what you do today sets the table for the future, because the people that will come after you will have jobs, and you'd want that in a board. So you have to build a structure that works within that confine. And that's important.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I just may follow up. So I agree with everything you said, Mike. Two comments. One, I think that the time sensitivity of the airport's business, you can help us. And you can do this, and you generally do. But no board likes to get a decision that's got to be made that day, right? If we have the ability to have a discussion about it, if we hit let's say we set a 5-hour limit, 4+1, and we blow that and we don't make a decision, the wheels don't come off the machine because we haven't been able to decide there. So just giving us the luxury of some time and space for decision making will continue to be important. It's important now, and you do it. Will continue to be important. On the time limitation, I mean, we are, yeah. I mean, we're all busy, regardless of how old we are. We're all busy. But you're right about, the jobs take our time, and the way we're running the meetings now, where we essentially plan on a full day with a lunch break and all of that, is really, really challenging. And I suspect it'll be really challenging for any other board members that come on. So that's part of what's on my mind as we try to talk about time management here.
It is a decision point for you. But as we sit here, this represents about $2,000 an hour.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
In staff time. So there is a cost associated with it too. So as we get busier, it will be more difficult for us to dedicate this time. Clearly we have to, clearly we must, and we're not arguing that, but if we can get any time that we can get to do the business of the airport is vital to us right now, and will become more vital as we move forward in the program. So that, yeah.
And I think having documents to look at and information and, also if it needs to be moved a month because we don't have what we need to review, I think that's important too. And I know that that's, and again, that's the agenda setting and kind of having it overall. So I heard quite a few things that people seem open to on the most part. Public comment, if there's like 15 or more people. Scott, could you take the to-do that we've got to come up with whatever that new suggestion is for 2 minutes or 1 minute, we can decide. Let's see, agenda management with documents in the board packet. I think having that memorialized a bit and Mike and I have been working towards that ultimately. Board meeting times, I really would like to see that we try to say, we'll do 4 hours, we'll consider an hour extension if needed.
100%. And let
Anything
me
else?
ask a question about
Mhm.
this. This is important. When I ran for office here, I had a job. And I considered that at the time that I ran for office. And each time that I put my name on the ballot again, I consider what my obligations are to, I do other things other than come to
Mhm.
board meetings.
I know that.
And you do?
Yeah.
I don't know how you know that, but the extent to which you put yourself, it isn't like you got plucked and forced into this job. Somebody's paying you to do this job. And so you have to get out of here by 1 o'clock. You put yourself in the position as an elected official to accept the obligations. And I would hope that whoever put themselves up for election actually attended some meetings of the board that they want to be a member of. And so I'm not buying the argument that because you have a job, you need to limit to 4 hours. I don't know how we would have decided this whole thing with the fire services in 4 hours. But the most important thing I want to get clarified is that when we limit it to 4 hours, 5 hours, then what happens? We adjourn it. Now we have to set it for another time. Okay. We haven't saved any time. We just moved it to another day of the month. And I don't know how that achieves the objective of being efficient, because we haven't been efficient. We just deferred it. So somebody else can, I guess, go to their job or do other things. I don't know what that is. I want a little clarification of how we're going to be efficient by adjourning after 4 hours. And again, you help me with that.
Sure. For me, it's about your ability to think clearly and be crisp and fresh and make good decisions and, analyze information. I mean, to be in a room all day, even a lot of times a board retreat or a board meeting will be 9 to 3 with a break for lunch and, a few breaks to stretch and that sort of thing. I don't know of meetings that go 6, 8, 10 hours all that often from my professional
We haven't had
perspective.
those either here. This is the totally unique, this fire thing.
I've had some here in my 3-year tenure. So, and I know that they've been historically, so it would just be, it would be a value in my opinion. And I guess if you want to say that the board after 4 hours, maybe we extend for 2 more hours. Do you agree that 6 hours in a day is a lot and maybe enough? And maybe there's information that staff needs to go and get and research at that
Sure.
point.
And that's at
And
the
that's-
discretion of the chair that we adjourn, but we don't just terminate the meeting.
Well, and
Okay.
Bill,
at that point.
And Bill, I appreciate what you're saying. I know if I go and adjourn a meeting at 4, after 4 hours and we haven't agreed to it, you're not going to be too happy.
Yeah.
In more ways, and more than I can imagine. So,
All I'm disagreeing with is the practicality of what the words that I hear that will limit it to 4 hours or limit it to 5 hours. Well, then we have another day that we have to all prepare and I have to comb my hair and put on pants. Okay. And
Yeah.
so I don't know how we've saved any time, right? As opposed to on the day of our board meeting, I blocked out the whole
your
day.
mind is fresher. I will say that at that point.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Your
So,
And I'm not.
And you
I'm
guys are
not
being quiet over
disputing
here,
what
you're-
you guys say. I just
Yeah.
want some clarification on how that really works.
yeah, I continue to be very supportive of the 4+1. I think that idea has a lot of merit. And I think you know, what I would say, Bill, is that the notion that because we set limits, we're just adding more meetings, but not reducing any time and decision making. I don't agree with that. I think it's been demonstrated here that when we bump up against the deadline, all of a sudden we start to get more focused in decision making. And I think it would probably have that effect. At least that's my hope.
And you can have prep meetings beforehand to really get to the information that you need. I think the written reports that we've been doing orally should help that too, Bill. So again, that we're really focused on the matters that are before us and that we're able to review what's going on and then obviously ask questions, hopefully beforehand and get our answers, you know, or reach out to that
Well,
committee
I
member.
agree, written reports would be nice. But I disagree with the idea that you submit your questions to the executive director and he answers them on the QT between the two of you. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. One of the suggestions I have on that written stuff is I don't deal well with, here it is on the dais, or it'll be provided to you later. It comes in 4 different versions, download this PDF and all that sort of stuff. That's not very efficient. It makes my head hurt and I can't read all of that stuff in a sporadic fashion. So if we need to get our beans in a row from a staff standpoint to say, here's the presentation we're going to give to the board. It's got all the information we believe necessary, or in discussions with the chair asks those questions to have that information included. But this piecemeal approach to giving us stuff is not acceptable. So that's just an add-on.
What
suggestion.
piecemeal?
You know, look at all the stuff we get. It's on the dais all the time. It's
Oh,
printed out,
the
or
additional.
I'm going to ask for the district to get me a printer and 5 reams of paper so I can put all that stuff out at home and then read it at the last minute.
I'm going to request we try to wrap this up in 10 minutes, see if what we can agree to. So, and I'd like to hear from this quiet side over here.
Well, are we taking these piecemeal? Or are we doing one? Are we listing changes we'd like to?
I have 5 changes that I've heard that I'd like to see if there's concurrence for.
I know there was some talk on when public comment happens. Is this memorialized in our, Scott, is this memorialized in our?
This is the only place more.
Well, this would be what you were talking about, Chair.
We already have
After
it.
staff presentation, that's open to public comment, chair closes comment, and then the board either asks questions or discusses or makes comments.
It's right there.
Mhm.
Do we want to more memorialize that in our governance manual? Mainly that is there for the chair's benefit, right?
Yeah.
It's like a checklist. This is the way you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, it's really there for you.
Yeah.
For all of you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You know what the mechanics of the meeting are.
And I think getting public comment first before we deliberate, that shows that we're listening to the public, we're listening to their concerns, that they've also attended the presentation and then they can make their concerns. So I know, and I haven't been perfect in my 5-month tenure here with that either. So I would like to memorialize it. And I appreciate that it's there. I do look to that. So, okay.
I see letting the public talk first as a good way, because we're not supposed to answer the public's questions from the podium, but if it's important enough to one of the board members, we could certainly ask staff that question when it becomes our time. So, but it's there. I know I've tried to follow it when I was chair, but it doesn't always happen. And
Mhm. Okay. Anything else? I've got 6 items and I'll go through them and just see if we've got.
I do not agree with the 10 to 15-minute break after 2 hours if we're going to have a 4-hour meeting, because that is just wasted time.
Concur.
Okay.
If somebody's got to go to the bathroom and we have a quorum, you can get up and go to the bathroom and come back in. We don't need to have a break.
Concur.
So no breaks necessary for the time
Not if we're tight.
ultimately,
Not in
or
4
if it's tight, I'm good with that.
It's
I'm-
not a union shop.
All right. So I'll go ahead and read what I've got. And the public comment, we limit the time to 2 minutes if there's more than 15 people. Ultimately, 1 to 2 minutes, I guess I would say. Obviously, if there's 40 or 50, we might want one, or we might want to do the head count as Director Leffel agreed to.
If there's less than
States.
15 minutes, how many minutes is, 15
Three.
people?
Three.
3.
Maybe go to 90 seconds. I think that's what I heard.
Half, did you hear 90 seconds?
Is that okay?
Well, that splits the difference,
Yeah.
1 and 2 minutes. 90
Ends it
seconds,
down.
okay, yeah,
Is that okay?
okay.
Even though we had a lot of people here, we didn't have that many actually talk to us, you know.
You had-
I would say we had less than 15.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
was something that we created too, was that
but a lot
sign
of
up.
them- a lot
So
of
we
them didn't
knew,
even-
we knew what item they wanted to talk on, and that actually facilitated too, the next
Yeah.
3 people that, and hopefully that can continue as well. But again, that's more procedural. I understand it doesn't all need to be written down. Management will continue with documents in the packet prior and just workload balance ultimately for staff, ensuring that the critical items are on every agenda. And we should have a better insight to that as a board with our 6-month and our 2-year plans that we'll be getting next meeting too, that I think that insight will really be helpful to understand how much workload is in front of staff as a whole. Board meeting times, 4+1 is what I hear. So we would do 4 hours with an
I disagree.
addition to add 1.
Noted.
Mhm. Written reports of oral review of meetings. And so anybody who attends a meeting outside, if they could, can we just, Mike, who should we submit those to?
They should be submitted to staff so we can include those in the packet.
Okay,
Denise.
Yes.
Denise, or you, or both?
Both.
Both?
Yep.
Okay. And I was getting to the point when I was on AMBAG that I would do it right there, and then I didn't have to remember 2 weeks later, and CC'd myself on it as well. And closed session will be included in those 4 hours. And the item up there, the agenda item action procedure. And how we handle each item.
I would move
Okay.
we adopt those.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
You need-
Let's do this. I was gonna say, let me, if it would be okay, let me take that as direction. I'll write up a staff report and because some of these are gonna have governance manual.
Impact.
Implication.
Like, for example, it does say in the governance manual, there are 3 minutes per item for the speakers.
Okay.
So some will have some impact.
I do think it's important though, that they give us that clear direction so that
Yeah.
we're clear what it is that you want.
So we're directing staff to do
There you
those
go.
6 things.
There you go.
And if it requires changes to governance manual, do so and bring it back. If it does not, they are implemented effective immediately. Right?
Well, I think with the staff report, we're coming.
It will come,
Yeah.
it will come before.
Yeah. It's through this.
Okay. All right.
Where is this gonna be like in a document that we
Yeah.
give to every board member and they have to put it in a frame and keep it? As opposed to having a governance.
Well, I guess
with
the
this.
chair needs to, Bill.
I
I
mean,
just think
the
they're.
reason we have a governance manual is so everybody has a copy of that and can refer to what the rules of procedure are for a variety of things. So now I guess we're gonna have a governance manual and then we're gonna have a separate document.
Many of these will be memorialized.
In the governance manual.
Okay.
But what I'm looking for is just concurrence by all 5 of you that those 6 topics are what you want us to pursue.
Well, I don't think we're going to get concurrence on all 5. So I think it needs to be a motion and a vote.
There you go.
We'll bring them back for your consideration.
Next, okay.
Okay. So no motion necessary.
Motion,
Yeah.
you withdraw the
Good.
motion?
Yep.
Okay.
We leave it in
Thanks.
your capable hands.
And then I also have, and this is included, the strategic planning session. These were my notes from that meeting on November 4th. And then I did also ask Scott to print, this is the email that we received over the Thanksgiving holiday. And again, it's been about 6 months. I know when we were in that meeting, we talked about, do we put the vision and mission somewhere? So it doesn't just go on a shelf, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So, and I don't know that we've ever as a body even looked at what was rewritten and just if we're comfortable with all of that. And hopefully this can be a 15-minute conversation, unless there's really a need to have a longer one. And again, these are my notes, the bullet points, those are my notes from the November 4th meeting. And if anything seems awry or, I'm not the documenter overall, but I just happen to have notes at the
Yes.
time. The bulleted.
Mm.
It was on the dais. There you go. Yeah. Mike had taken my notes and because there wasn't a lot of notes at the time, so he had taken my notes and written stuff down.
Yeah.
And that's why you don't see my notes on there because I didn't write down while I was talking, I guess. But I agreed with much of what was discussed. I thought it was a good session. I think it's also important. I think, Bill, as you talk about too, sometimes I think that's a time for us to kind of discuss some of our concerns or where things are going and maybe work through some of those things too, that it's not always in our regular board meeting.
Yeah. Chair, if I guess I'll start us off with
Sure.
your permission. So, so I thought it was a good retreat in terms of kind of beginning a board cohesion process and communication with staff and staff board cohesion. I think that what I'd hope is that we would do an annual session that precedes budget development and that the product of our next go around would actually be a bit more of a written plan. What we talked about here was sort of a bit, I think it's hard for you to operationalize what we produced. At least it'd be hard for me to operationalize. I don't know. And so I have some ideas about our next go around, but that's quite some time away, probably a year, a little less than a year, 10 months. So I'm good with where we are currently. But look forward to doing it annually and timing it with budget development so that it supports that budget development process. Thank you.
Are you looking at me?
No, well, you
Okay.
got close to me, so. Haircut, real
I,
close.
I didn't, as far as the summary goes of what we did in the strategic planning session. I think I've said this before. I came away with it like feeling like I kissed my sister. There was nothing new in there. I mean, it was maybe because we've been down this strategic planning thing several times already. And at the end of the day, there were no tasks that came out of it, no things that people were going to do on a timeline. Nothing said, this is what we're going to do. And we honestly believe that. And we're all willing to take an assignment to accomplish all that. It was too much feel good and reiterating what we're already doing, we already feel comfortable with, or we already know about. And so there's nothing in I would like to see in future strategic planning meetings that we end up with some kind of an action plan out of the whole thing with some specific achievable objectives if we're going to invest our time in strategic planning. And so that's my feeling about the current strategic planning plan that we have. I don't know what we are going to accomplish out of that other than follow the master plan and build a new terminal. And do all the necessary, ask for all the necessary FAA grants to do all that and accomplish whatever tasks need to be to build a new terminal. So what else is there? And we're going to seek more air services out there. When it comes to practical implementation, though, what does that mean to get new air service or expand our existing air services? And what does that mean to us as a legislative body about going forward with the master plan. What does that mean? Is there anything that we have to decide? No, it's pretty well decided already. So anyhow, that's my feelings. I was very disappointed in this strategic planning session and we had to pay somebody $8,000 to go through that process. And maybe it's a reflection of the fact that we have done this several times before and nobody ever did anything with it. So thank you.
You did review the strategic goals that came out of it,
Sure.
correct? Okay, and I want to acknowledge the discomfort in the room for the statement, kissing my sister. So anybody else have comments?
What'd you say?
For the record, I've never kissed either one of my sisters. Please let that be
And I
noted.
don't know
I
what
want
it
that.
means, so I need to look up Urban Dictionary, I guess. Right?
So I do have a couple questions. I remember us spending a lot of time on our mission and vision statement. I see a couple different examples here. So I'm not sure, like I see two revised visions, but on this page, there's a revised vision also.
I think that's
That
maybe a
is
typo.
different than this one.
Yeah, I think that's a typo. I think maybe that's supposed to be mission. You think? Yeah, I think so. I had crossed
One
it out.
vision, one mission.
Yeah,
What he attempted to highlight was what the previous.
Oh, I see.
version,
Yes.
vision.
Yeah. We never did vote to adopt these, though, did we? We
Mm-mm.
voted to accept the report, or we accepted the report, but I don't think. Is this now our vision or mission, Mike? Are you moving forward with
Yeah,
this?
no, this is what we now assume as your.
Okay.
mission and mission. So if you choose, if you want to adopt it, you have not done that, but we just tacitly adopted it because this is what came out of the retreat.
We really didn't have conversation about it from my recollection, so that's what we're doing today ultimately, and it's been on the agenda for some time. Go ahead.
Should there be a formal adoption? I'm looking at you, Scott, when I ask this question.
I am a fan of formally adopting documents that you want to rely on. I think it's a good practice. Are you legally required to? No.
Yeah.
But I think it is a good practice that you adopt documents that you intend to rely on.
Okay. Well, then I would move that, since we've already discussed this, that staff comes back to us some future date with a agenda item and I don't think it has to be done by ordinance. We can be
Resolution.
by just to adopt the revised vision and mission statements.
Second.
All in favor?
Because it's not on there, but I agree with you.
Okay. Okay. And I want to articulate that when we were in that session, we came up with the word devolve. And I know we spent a lot of time talking about that word ultimately, and this is in the vision statement, which revised says, enhance safety and maintain our priority of sustainability and convenience as we evolve to connect the global aviation needs of our thriving community. And then I'll just read the revised mission statement 2. The mission of the Monterey Peninsula Airport District is to connect the community with convenient commercial and general aviation access to the air transportation system, operate the airport in a safe, efficient, sustainable, and fiscally responsible manner, and evolve the airport towards meeting future needs, opportunities, and challenges. And with that, I would ask staff to maybe consider, I know we talked about putting this somewhere just as a, so that it's there for all of us to see. Again, that we don't want it to just sit on a shelf. So however we do that, whether it's even in our social media or website, but then also potentially in our boardroom or packet or whatever staff would think would make the most sense. It would be great to see that too. All right. 29, 1 minute before 3:30.
All right.
Thank you for that, everyone. And I got to go back to, and I think we're going into closed session now. Scott, do you want to read us into closed session?
Sure, we have 2 items for closed session. D is in David 1 and E is in Echo 1. I would suggest item, and again, this is not a secret, D1 is listed for the board to give parameters related to negotiations on the regarding the R fire station.
The south side.
The south side, north side of the contract, the whole thing. And so what I would suggest is, since Madam Chair, you need to recuse yourself as that we reverse them. We do E1 first, and then we'll switch over to D1. If that means the pleasure of the board, that way you don't have to, Madam Chair, that you don't have to.
See, I appreciate that.
Mr.
No,
Conlon,
I appreciate that. Yep. Okay. And do we should take public comment. There's no one in the room, so we're okay with that. So we'll go to closed session and report back out at the end. And I will not be here for reporting out.
I'm leaving for 18 months, on the 18th, I'm going to.
Now you can announce out closed session, which show no reportable.
Okay. I'll be back in session. Okay, we're back in session.
Oh.
Good night, and
We're back in session at 5 o'clock on on Wednesday. And we've just adjourned from closed session. There was no reportable action. We are now adjourned in our regular meeting.
At 5:11.